good afternoon for at least half of the country. So, man, what do you do whenever it is law enforcement that's robbing you? And I'm not talking about the typical way they rob you, doing the really disrespectful things like, I don't know, coming up behind you and putting those silly lights on and expecting you to pull over just because you were doing 80 and a 40 at, all these inconvenience. I'm not talking about the piracy. I'm not talking about highway piracy. I'm actually talking about full-blown burglary or robbery, I guess this would actually be. This is nuts. So let me bring you the story and, let's talk a little bit about a possible remedy because this is a pretty tough situation here. So bringing on over the web view, you see, and I didn't intend on doing another video, but when I saw this headline, it's like, I can't ignore that. Family tied up, robbed by armed men posing as deputies. Now, before we go any further, you can probably tell by the image there. I was going to say, any guesses on what state this is? Yeah, well, this is what the story has to say. A California family, I know, everybody's surprised, right, is terrified after a group of armed men posing as deputies invaded their home and held them at gunpoint as they robbed them. The victims say several armed men posing as deputies forced their way into their home around 5 a.m. Tuesday. They say the men cut the locks on their gate, then drove in with red and blue lights on top of a small black car. Amanda, who wants to remain anonymous, says her mother's boyfriend opened the door, believing the suspects were law enforcement. That's when they barged in the home. We thought it was really cops outside, and they said they had a warrant, but we don't know what they would be searching for because we don't have anything in the house to hide, Amanda said. Amanda says the suspects grabbed her brother, her mom, and her mom's boyfriend. They made them lie face down, aggressively zip-tied their hands behind their backs, and held them at gunpoint. The robbers then rummaged through the house for their wallets, keys, car keys, purses, jewelry, and even documents. They said they were looking for money and marijuana. Amanda says the suspects were using code names, and she didn't see their faces. Flashing their flashlights a lot so we couldn't really see them. They were wearing masks and stuff, and they all had guns, so it was just a very scary incident, she said. The men stayed in the house for at least 20 minutes. Amanda's mom was eventually able to free her hands, and the family called 911. The family had only been living in the home for a matter of months, and Amanda says they no longer feel safe. None of us have ever experienced anything like this, so this was just crazy, she said. Authorities say the suspects are still on the loose. The investigation is ongoing. Detectives gathered some surveillance video from the surrounding area, but victims' cameras were not working at the time. Always important to make sure you have your gear in working order. Absolutely important. And that if you do have that type of security gear, that you have a way to power it if the power goes out. So, very important things. So, let's talk about this. Let's unwrap this a little bit. Because there was a point in time where I could tell you in confidence of the right thing to do in this situation. And that particular thing would be to simply dial 911. If you have doubts whether you're driving in a car and somebody pulls up behind you with flashing lights, or whether you're in your home and somebody's beating on the door, yelling that they're police, you used to be able to reasonably talk or to people, you know what I mean? Or you could call 911, for instance, whether you're driving down the road or whether you're, in your home. You could have called 911. You could have verified that there was actually an officer there, okay? Here's the problem, and that I know that still sounds like a good idea, but here's the problem. You have just absolutely trigger-happy, authoritarian, just off-the-charts, insanely aggressive police officers out there. So, if this was law enforcement that was outside of their door, and they said, hang on, let me verify this, and gone to call 911, well, they may have busted the door down then, right? Saying they were resisting arrest, or trying to prevent them from serving the warrant. Right? A million excuses, right? They got them all. See, we're in between a rock and a hard place here when it comes to a situation like this, because the law enforcement isn't going to act like they're supposed to act. They're going to act like people that just want to give you orders, take commands, take control of the situation. They don't care about anything, right? Nothing. However, you've got criminals that apparently are starting to do this, and I'm sure we'll probably get away with it multiple times. I'm willing to bet that you see a rash of this happening, and it could very likely be the same individuals. Why? Because they'll probably never catch these guys. The only way that they'd be able to identify these guys is if they can identify that vehicle, and who says that that vehicle is owned by any one of them? It could be a stolen vehicle, for example. It's a bad situation. I don't know. Maybe mention something in the comments. I don't pimp for people to comment and all that, just because I'm not here for that. But I would love to come up with a solution for this, a safe, effective solution, because I think we're going to see a rash of this. I really do think we're going to see a rash of this across the nation. My goodness, folks. My goodness. What do you do? Shalom.